human rights are closely interlinked. They either flourish together or they perish one by one. Unfortunately, nowadays this interlinkage seems to be not flourishing. It's disturbing to witness democratic backsliding, challenges to the rule of law, and a shrinking space for human rights defenders and for media around the globe. We must work effectively together to stop this downward spiral. The Netherlands has a long-standing, multifaceted, deepening and broadening relationship with Pakistan. Only 2 months ago, our Minister for Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Sigrid Kaag, visited Islamabad. And we are supporting the extremely important efforts of the HJHS Legal Aid Cell to improve access to justice for women and for religious minorities. For the Netherlands, gender equality and supporting human rights defenders are crucial to strengthen democracy and the rule of law. We believe that shrinking civil society space is an alarming trend worldwide. Without a vibrant civil society, democracy and socio-economic progress cannot be realized. And this meeting today of you coming here in great numbers shows how important it is for civil society to come together and to contribute to the public debate. We believe that everyone should have equal rights, irrespective of who they are. And that's why the Netherlands advocates for equal rights for women and for girls. Of course, respecting local cultures and social norms, surely. But throughout the world, some norms are truly universal. For instance, it's enormously important that children are treated equally from a young age, that they learn about human rights in order to claim them later in their life. Every young girl, just like every young boy, should have equal access to education, to healthcare, and enjoy equal economic opportunities for a better life. To conclude, it feels wonderful to be back here at this conference in the memory of ASMA JAHANGIR. Together, we can each in our own unique way continue ASMA's unrelenting pursuit of human rights for all. Bahut shukriya.
Thank you so much. In the meanwhile, we have also joined by Mr. Justice Shahram Sarwar and an old friend of ASMA JAHANGIR, a bar leader from Balochistan, Sardar Tahir Hussain. As I was mentioning, the achievements of the female lawyers in the legal field, I would also like to introduce another ASMA's follower, ASMA Ahmad, who also served as Advocate General of the Punjab, the principal law officer. She is also with us. Moving further, actually the hall is jam-packed and the management could not find out our distinguished guest, Dr. Philip Deichmann, the Deputy Ambassador for Germany. I'm just wondering if His Excellency is there in the hall. So we move on further. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know and as rightly said by the previous speaker, that ASMA JAHANGIR was known as an Iron Lady. And while paying her tribute, Ali Zafar Saab also joined us, the former President, Supreme Court Bar Association, and old friend of ASMA. Thank you so much for coming. I would be switching to Urdu poetry for ASMA JAHANGIR. کہ بے خوف زندہ لہجے میں کرتی تھی گفتگو، خود ساختہ خداؤں سے ڈرتی نہیں تھی تم، اور ایک نقطہ شعور تھی کرتاس زیست پر، پھیلے اگر کبھی تو سمٹتی نہیں تھی تم. تو آئرن لیڈی کو فالو کرنے والا ایک آئرن مین بھی ہے ہمارے درمیان، ایک مضبوط آواز، سابق صدر سپریم کورٹ بار ایسوسیشن. خواتین و حضرات، علی احمد کوٹ.
Honorable Chief Justice, Mr. Justice گلزار صاحب, Honorable Justice قاضی فائز عیسی صاحب, Honorable Justice Mr. احمد صاحب, Honorable Justice Mr. اطہرمن اللہ صاحب, باقی Honorable Judges, Presidium members, ladies and gentlemen. ایک بہت بڑی خوبصورت آواز جس کو ابھی صرف چند منٹ پہلے آئرن لیڈی کے حوالے سے ان کا تعارف کرایا گیا اور ریفرنس ہوا. ساری زندگی اس کی آواز غریبوں کی آواز تھی, اس ملک کے مظلوم لوگوں کی آواز تھی. کیا عورت کیا مرد, ہر شخص کے لیے اس نے آواز اٹھائی اور بڑے دلے سے آواز اٹھائی. جب وہ آواز, اس میں ایک گونج تھی, ایک چیخ تھی. وہ یہ نہیں دیکھتی تھی کہ یہ آواز, یہ چیخ کن کے کانوں میں جا کر جو ہے ہلچل مچائے گی. کبھی اس نے نہیں سوچا, کبھی اس نے نہیں سوچا. مگر آج اس آئرن لیڈی کے حوالے سے میں بہت افسوس اور اس سے کہتا ہوں کہ عاصمہ جہانگیر فاؤنڈیشن کے مینجمنٹس نے آج جو اس اناگورل سیشن کے لیے جو ٹاپک چوز کیا ہے, اس حوالے سے میں سمجھتا ہوں کہ قطعاً صحیح نہیں. Role of the judiciary in protecting the human rights and strengthening the democracy. کیا بات کرتے ہیں, کیا بات کرتے ہیں. کون سی جوڈیشری موجود ہے؟ کون سی جوڈیشری موجود ہے؟ وہ جو ہمارے سامنے ہے, وہ جو جس میں ہم پیش ہوتے ہیں, وہ عدالتیں, وہ جوڈیشری جس میں اس ملک کے لاکھوں لوگ صبح 8 بجے سے 2:30 بجے تک انصاف کے لیے, اپنی داد رسی کے لیے موجود ہوتے ہیں. جب وہ 2:30 بجے واپس اپنے گھروں کو جاتے ہیں تو اپنے سینے پہ, اپنی روحوں کے اوپر ایک زخم لے کر جاتے ہیں. آپ اس جوڈیشری کی بات کرتے ہیں, وہ لوگوں کو, ہیومن رائٹس کو پروٹیکٹ کرے گا, وہ ہماری جمہوریت کو اسٹرینتھن کرے گا. بہت ہلکا, بہت چھوٹا ٹاپک آپ نے جو ہے اس اسپیکرز کو دیا ہے. یہ جوڈیشری جس کو میں نہیں کہتا, انٹرنیشنل جو ایکسپرٹس کے حوالے سے نیچے کی جو نمبر ہیں اس میں 130 میں 126 نمبر پہ. مجھے وائس آف امریکہ والے نے, پاکستانی تھا, انہوں نے کہا کہ آپ سے کچھ باتیں کرنی ہے اور آپ کا انٹرویو لینا ہے. میں نے کہا کس بات پہ؟ کہتے ہیں ابھی جو رپورٹ آئی ہے کہ پاکستان کی جوڈیشری دنیا کی جوڈیشری میں 126 نمبر پہ ہے. میں نے کہا اس پہ آپ بحیثیت پاکستانی خوش نہیں کہ نیچے سے ہم 4 نمبر اوپر ہیں. یہ مذاق بند ہونا چاہیے. اور جو بھی ہماری ایک جوڈیشری موجود ہے, میں افسوس سے کہتا ہوں, میں کوئی شوقیہ نہیں کہتا, کوئی اب کسی بھی مقصد میں, خدا کی قسم, میں قسم کھا کے کہتا ہوں, کوئی میرا مقصد نہیں ہے اس طرح کی باتیں کرنے کے لیے. میں ایک ذمہ دار آدمی ہوں اس ملک کے لیے, اس ملک کی جوڈیشری کے لیے, اس ملک کی جوڈیشری کے لیے. جتنے لوگوں نے کام کیا, جتنے لوگوں نے قربانیاں دی, سب سے آگے علی احمد گر تھا. مجھے رائٹ پہنچتا ہے بات کرنا. یہ میرا حق ہے, یہ میرا حق ہے کہ میں بات کروں. آج جو بھی ہماری جوڈیشری ہے ہم رسپیکٹ کرتے ہیں. میں کبھی بھی کورٹ روم میں جو ہے میں وہ کرتے ہوئے گیا ہوں اور بہت رسپیکٹ پے کرتے ہوا میں گیا ہوں. وہ کورٹ میں رسپیکٹ دیتے ہیں, کوشش کرتے ہیں, لڑتے ہیں, جھگڑتے ہیں لوگوں کے لیے, جو بھی تھوڑی بہت چھوٹی موٹی جو بھی ریلیف ہم لینے کی کوشش کرتے ہیں. مگر اس جوڈیشری میں بھی واضح طور پہ نظر آنے والی بات ہے کہ ڈویژن ہے. 126 نمبر پہ بھی جو جوڈیشری ہے اس میں بھی ڈویژن ہے. اب ہم کیا لوگوں کو میسج دے رہے ہیں؟ مجھے افسوس ہوتا ہے, میں ایک ذمہ دار آدمی ہوں اور مجھے افسوس ہوتا ہے کیوں ہم اس حالت پہ پہنچے. یہ 22 کروڑ عوام کا ملک ہے, 22 کروڑ عوام کا ملک ہے, 22 کروڑ عوام کا ملک ہے. اور ایک جنرل
بیٹا میں صرف ایک عرض کرتا ہوں آپ کے سینٹیمنٹس پہنچے علی بھائی کی موجودگی میں, کیونکہ ہمارے یہاں ہر طرح کے ڈیلیگیٹس ہیں باہر سے بھی, ہم ویسے بھی وی آر رننگ شارٹ آف ٹائم. یہ کائنڈلی سلوگنز ہم کریں گے کانفرنس کے اختتامی اجلاس میں جو کہ پولیٹیکل ایجنڈے کے ساتھ ہوگا, اور اس میں انشاءاللہ العزیز آپ کو وہ کلر بھی نظر آئے گا جو ہمیں عاصمہ جہانگیر دے کے گئی ہیں. ہم اس سیشن کو کیونکہ کنکلوژن کی طرف لے کے جا رہے ہیں, آپ کے جذبات ہمارے سامنے. علی صاحب
جنرل جو 22 کروڑ عوام کے اوپر, ایک جنرل 22 کروڑ عوام کے اوپر حاوی ہے, بھاری ہے. یا تو اس جنرل کو نیچے آنا پڑے گا یا لوگوں کو اوپر جانا پڑے گا, دو ہی صورتیں ہیں. اب برابری ہوگی, اب برابری ہوگی, بالکل ایسے برابری ہوگی. جنرل اور پاکستان کے ایک شہری میں کوئی فرق نہیں ہوگا. یہ جو ہماری جوڈیشری ہے, یہی جنرل جو 22 کروڑ عوام کے اوپر حاوی ہے, اسی نے ہماری جوڈیشری کے 126 نمبر پہ پہنچا ہے. آج اس ملک میں انٹلیکچوئل کلاس وہ اس ملک سے کب کی ختم ہو چکی ہے. اس ملک میں اب کوئی انٹلیکچوئل کلاس نہیں ہے, اور اس ملک میں کوئی مڈل کلاس درمیان میں نہیں رہا. تو آج انٹلیکچوئل کلاس نہیں ہے تو جو اوپر لوگ بیٹھے ہیں وہ چھوٹے چھوٹے قد کے لوگ بیٹھے ہوئے.
میں تمام دوستوں کے جذبات کا خیال رکھتے ہوئے ایک عرض کروں گا کہ یہ سیاسی جلسہ نہیں ہے. آپ پلیز سارے ماحول کو دیکھتے ہوئے اپنے جذبات کا اظہار کریں. علی احمد صاحب ہیں آخری سیشن میں, پلیز ڈیکورم کا خیال کریں. آپ پلیز 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 جنٹلمین, علی احمد صاحب آگے, داؤد بیٹھ جاؤ. آپ پلیز ٹرائی ٹو مینٹین دا ڈیکورم آف دی کانفرنس پلیز. تھینک یو ویری مچ. آئیں صاحب.
تو جنرل کو نیچے آنا پڑے گا. بالکل اب کلیئر کٹ بات ہے. اب وقت آ گیا ہے کہ آنکھوں میں آنکھیں ڈال کر بات کریں گے, اور خام ضروری ہے کہ ان لوگوں کی آنکھوں میں آنکھیں ڈال کے بات کریں گے جو ہمیں 70 سال سے اپنی آنکھیں دکھا رہے ہیں. یہ ملک, اس میں آپ جب مڈل کلاس نہیں رہی, جب انٹلیکچوئل کلاس نہیں رہی, اب کوئی لیڈرشپ نہیں. جو بھی آئے گا وہ اور چھوٹے قد کا آدمی آتا جائے گا. یہ ملک جس حالت میں پہنچا ہے, میں ایک سیاسی ایکٹیوسٹ کے طور پر اپنے دن رات میں نے لگائے ہیں اس میں, سڑکوں پہ لوگوں کے ساتھ کندھے سے کندھا ملا کر میں جلد سے جلوس میں رہا ہوں. میں اس ایکسپیرینس کی بنیاد پہ کہتا ہوں, اٹھو, اپنے جان میں جان پیدا کرو. یہ ملک آپ کی مٹھی سے ریت کے ذرات کی طرح گرتا ختم ہو رہا ہے. کوئی ملک آپ کے لیے نہیں رہے گا. یہ ملک اب بھی آپ کے پاس وقت ہے, اب بھی آپ کے پاس وقت ہے. مٹھی میں ریت کے ذرات کو جس طرح نہیں روکا جا سکتا, اس طرح ان حالات میں جو ملک جا رہا ہے آپ اس کو برقرار نہیں رکھ سکتے. آپ کو کشتیاں جلانی پڑیں گی, کشتیاں جلانی پڑیں گی, اور اپنی زندگی کا جان کی بازی لگانی پڑے گی. جان کی بازی لگائیں گے, جان کی بازی لگائیں گے تو یہ ملک بچے گا. نہیں تو اس ملک کے ساتھ بہت 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 مذاق ہو رہا ہے. 6 سال سے 7 8 سال سے بلوچستان میں لوگوں کو اٹھا کر ایجنسی اٹھا کر لے گئی ہیں, کوئی پتہ نہیں. یہ مذاق بند کریں. اب آنکھوں میں آنکھیں ڈال کر بات کرنے کا وقت آیا ہے. آپ کو لوگوں کو سوچنے کا, لوگوں کو خواب دیکھنے کا موقع دیں. خواب دیکھیں گے تو یہ ملک ایک بہت خوبصورت ملک بنے گا. تھینک یو.
بہت شکریہ جی. علی احمد صاحب کا ایک اپنا انداز ہے, اور ان کا جو کرب ہے وہ ہمیشہ ہمارے ساتھ شیئر کرتے ہیں. میں ایک مینجمنٹ کے بہاف پہ اناؤنسمنٹ ضرور دینا چاہوں گا. I have been told by the management of ASMA JAHANGIR Foundation and the organizers of the conference that we respect freedom of expression and we believe in dialogue. But at the same time ہم یہ بھی سمجھتے ہیں کہ جو constitutional officers ہیں اور ہمارے معزز مہمانان جہاں پہ بیٹھے ہوئے ہیں, ہر سپیکر کی ایک اپنی رائے ہے, وہ کسی ایک فرد یا انسٹیٹیوشن کی طرف ڈائریکٹڈ نہیں ہے. اٹ از ہز اون اوپینین. تو بات کو ہم آگے ضرور بڑھاتے ہوئے, بار اور بینچ کا رشتہ جو ہے وہ شروع سے بڑا جڑا ہوا ہے, اور میں سمجھتا ہوں اسی پوائنٹ آف ویو سے ہم آپس میں شکایتیں بھی کرتے ہیں. بار اور بینچ عدالت سے باہر چھوٹے موٹے آرگومنٹ میں بھی آتی ہے, ڈائلاگ بھی ہوتا ہے, کچھ رجشیں بھی ہوتی ہیں, کچھ پیار بھی بڑھتے ہیں, اور اسی بیلنسنگ رویے کی وجہ سے میں سمجھتا ہوں کہ دونوں ادارے جو ہیں ان کی انڈیپینڈنس جو ہے وہ مینٹین ہوتی ہے. اس تقریب کو آگے بڑھاتے ہوئے میں گزارش کروں گا اس تقریب کے کو ہوسٹ پریزیڈنٹ سپریم کورٹ بار ایسوسی ایشن آف پاکستان محترمہ عاصمہ جہانگیر کے پرانے ساتھی جناب محمد احسن بھون صاحب سے.
بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. Honorable Chief Justice of Pakistan, Honorable Judges of Supreme Court, Honorable Chief Justice Islamabad High Court, Honorable Chief Justice Lahore High Court, Excellencies, Honorable Judges, members of the civil society, parliamentarians, bar leaders, ladies and gentlemen. میں دو چار لفظ اردو میں آپ سے بات کروں گا. یہ کانفرنس آپ کو علم ہے کہ محترمہ عاصمہ جہانگیر کی اس ویژن اور اس آواز کی یاد میں ہے جس کو ہم نے ہمیشہ یاد رکھنا. تو تمام ہمارے ینگسٹرز کا جو جذبہ ہے وہ قابل ستائش اور قابل تقلید ہے، لیکن ہر فنکشن کے اپنے لوازمات ہوتے ہیں چونکہ اور ڈائنامکس ہوتے ہیں. چونکہ آج کا فنکشن کوئی سیاسی جلسہ نہیں بلکہ وہ تجاویز ہیں جو ہمارے اداروں کے حوالے سے یا ہمارے ملک کے حوالے سے یا انٹرنیشنل ورلڈ کے حوالے سے آگے لے جانے کی تجویز ہے. اس لیے میں یہ عرض کروں گا کہ یہاں شیم کا نعرہ بالکل نہیں لگانا، اس لیے کہ یہاں ہر مہمان انتہائی قابل تکریم اور قابل عزت ہے. ہم نے اپنے بچوں کو ایسے فنکشن کی تربیت دینی ہے کہ جہاں یہ ڈائلاگ میں ہم ایک دوسرے کی باہمی رائے کا احترام کرتے ہوئے آگے چل سکیں. وقت کی شدید قلت ہے، اسی بات کے بعد میں اپنا پیپر پڑھوں گا. تمام حاضرین کی موجودگی میں خاص طور پر جو سب سے پہلی کانفرنس ہوئی تھی that was inaugurated by the then Honorable Chief Justice of Pakistan میاں ثاقب نثار صاحب، ان کی پریزنس میں بڑا ویلکم کرتا ہوں. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be present here and an absolute pleasure to be addressing such a diverse audience, including the Honorable Judges of High Court, Supreme Court, parliamentarians, policy makers, journalists, researchers, gathered here from all corners of the world in the memory of ASMA JAHANGIR today. I would like to extend warm welcome to everyone in attendance. This would have not been possible without the tremendous efforts of an extremely hard-working team. I think that this conference has come to an extremely critical and sensitive juncture of Pakistan's history. We are living in times where ASMA's vision is more relevant than ever before. The democratic system in the state of Pakistan is in turmoil, while freedom of media is facing bounds like never before. The judiciary is under immense pressure and the freedom of courts being questioned like never before. The state of human rights abuse across the region of Jammu and Kashmir, airing on national television every day, is constant reminder of the horrors that ASMA warned us about. Accountability, civil freedoms, and trust in democratic institutions within the country or even the whole of South Asia, for that matter, has never been more fragile. We have politically unstable neighbors with democratic system either polarizing or faltering on one side and completely non-existent on the other. This has a natural destabilizing impact for the entire region, and it has therefore never been more critical to emphasize the need for complete faith and trust in democratic institutions than now. I don't think anything could be as strong as indicator of a well-performing democracy as the institutions of human rights in a country. Human rights, rightly identified as the core evaluative indicator of a democratic system, are also one of the most fragile. میں ویلکم کرتا ہوں جناب جسٹس عمر عطا بندیال صاحب, دی سینئر پیونی آنریبل جج آف سپریم کورٹ. Human rights, rightly identified as the core evaluative indicator of a democratic system, are also one of the most fragile, easily manipulated, and initial points of attack when a democratic system in a country is derailed. Look anywhere in the world. The first evident indicator of a democratic system diminishing or being under threat is abuse of human rights in the country. This involves curtailing of civil rights such as free movement, right to protest, freedom of expression, and most importantly, right to free and fair trial. While it's true that democratic systems across the world are different owing to varying historical trajectories and cultural influences, democracy and human rights share a mutually inclusive relationship, as there can be no human rights without democracy and vice versa. In my opinion, the basic description of any democracy in the world involves a solidified guarantee of basic human rights being protected. Democracy is conditional in its nature. Calling the country's political system a democracy, I'm afraid, does not make it a democracy. The protection and propagation of human rights, and by default, the strengthening of democracy needs legal protection. It needs deep and penetrating foundation. It needs presidential advancement, and lastly, effective and discriminative accountability. The only institution in the country capable on the delivering of the metrics of creation, propagation, advancement, and accountability apart from the parliament is the judiciary. The superiority of democracy to the other system of government lies in the principle of separation of power and corresponding checks and balancing, that their arms of government, the legislative, the executive, and the judicial, exercise over one another. Pakistan's experience with democracy is not a success story, but it is most certainly a resilient story. While all three of these pillars are equal important. I will stick to speaking about the judicial arm since theme of the conference demands it. In my humble opinion, everywhere in the world, the dictators or the representatives of imperial forces use the religion as a tool to perpetuate their rule. In Pakistan, a dictator, namely Ziaul Haq, used the same practice and inserted Article 62(1)(f) in the Constitution of Pakistan, whereby it was conditioned that parliamentarians should be sadiq, ameen, righteous, etc., while taking advantage of the presence of all stakeholders. I would say to be a sadiq, ameen, is a virtue of prophets, whereas all the human beings are fallible, whether they are judges, parliamentarians, or any other representative of the society. So they cannot be measured or tested at the touchstone of such traits. So the provisions of Article 162(1)(f) inserted in the Constitution of the Pakistan, in my humble view, is against and in conflict of the basic spirit of the Islam, and is liable to be struck down. Similarly, I would say the power used under Article 184(3) by the Honorable Supreme Court, there is no right of appeal, and the fate of parties is always sealed for all time to come, which is violative of the Article 10A of the Constitution. So, I have already made request to the Honorable Chief Justice, and I would request the Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court to amend the rules of Supreme Court accordingly to provide a right of appeal to the aggrieved parties. Let me say now, I think Pakistan has one of the most active judiciaries in the world. We have judges who are bold, brave, and undeterred. Where it comes to questioning decisions made by the government and the armed forces. But still we are unable to dispel the impression of pressures. There is no juncture in the history of Pakistani politics where government have not relied upon the courts for their judgments. Even in the dark, authoritative segments of Pakistan history, rulers have repeatedly tried to gain legitimacy through courts. The point of making this argument is not to highlight or delve into historical decisions, because that is a dark past of our judiciary, but to signify that even in the darkest political periods, Pakistani courts were perceived to be the only institution that had the power to alter the status quo and change the national narratives. Democratic or not, almost all Pakistani statesmen have relied on courts in Pakistan at some point in history. I think the best tribute to ASMA could be a realization of the fact that history is the best used as a learning tool and not a turning map for the future. It takes just one person, one judge, one journalist, one politician to stand up and challenge democratic infringements. That one person is feared by everyone who at any time even think of challenging the democratic system is in the country. That person was ASMA JAHANGIR. It will always be ASMA. Thank you very much.
کہ آپ ذرا لائیو اسٹریمنگ ہٹا دیجیے گا، جج صاحب کی یہ ریکویسٹ تھی. بہت شکریہ.
Honorable Chief Justice of Pakistan, Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court, Honorable Chief Justice of the Lahore High Court, elected representatives of the past, it has become prestigious because it attracts not only members of the judiciary, but the member of the bar, the political leadership, and the civil society. This dialogue is very important. I had prepared because when I read the topic, it appeared to be a very academic topic. But after hearing Mr. Ali Ahmed Kurd, first of all, I'm grateful to him. It is very important. It is very important for us to know what the bar and what the people think about us. Ladies and gentlemen, let me assure Mr. Ali Ahmed Kurd that no judge who is independent can ever make an excuse that he can be pressurized or influenced. Any such excuse, I'm afraid, is a violation of the oath. And the oath that we take, we swear in the name of Allah. Mr. Ali Ahmed Kurd, what he said, and unfortunately it reminded me of an incident, and that would probably highlight the dilemma, not just of the judiciary, but of the other institutions as well. It was 26th of January 2000. And I was a lawyer, and I wasn't enrolled as a lawyer of the Supreme Court. I took up the newspaper in the morning, and it said that the judges will be administered oath under PCU. I was quite shocked. And my driver had not come. I took the car and went to the Supreme Court. There was an eerie silence there. I kept asking people where were the judges, and they took me to a foyer, and in the middle of the foyer was a gentleman by the name of Buddha Khan, who was the additional registrar. and I had a handwritten petition. From a corridor, I heard loud laughter, and then judges came towards me, and I was in the middle of the foyer. And they asked me, "Why are you there?" I said, "Your Lordships, I have a grievance. You have already taken an oath, and you cannot take another oath. It will be violation of the earlier oath." They were so excited they didn't listen to me, and they ran towards the cars. Mr. Buddha Khan came back and he asked me, "What have you done?" I said, "They were some other judges who weren't here." So they said, "They are in such and such chambers." Nobody stopped me. I went to that chamber. Now I take a pause. How many in this audience can tell me the names of those 5 honorable judges who had refused to take oath on the 26th of January 2000? Anyone who can raise the hand and say who those judges were? None in the audience. This is what is shocking. I went to the chamber of Justice Nasir Aslam Zahid, who is alive, and I sent in the petition. The person came back and he said, "They've asked me to inform you to give it in the office of the registrar." I requested for a hearing, and I was given an audience. And 5 most honorable judges, 2 of whom would have been the Chief Justices of Pakistan, Justice Wajiuddin Ahmad and late Justice Kamal Mansoor Alam. Justice Khalilur Rahman was also there, and Justice late Mamoon Qazi. They asked me, "Young man, what do you want?" I said, "Your Lordships, I have a grievance. Before the petition is heard, I want a restraining order." It was my right to have taken that petition. But 7 years after that, I'll again give it a pause. I'm sorry, Mr. Ali Ahmed Kaur. You started this, so I thought I'll change my speech. When I came down, there was again an eerie silence. The authoritarian rule was at its peak. There was only 2 lawyers in the bar room when I came out, and I wouldn't like to name them. I sat in the car, went to my office. I thought the civil society will come out. I thought that there will be resistance. I request you to take up the newspapers of 27th of January 2000. There was usual business. Now I go back to 2007. There was a historic lawyers movement. It wasn't a movement for the restoration of judges. It was a struggle which symbolizes the topic the civil society and people of this country dreamt of a judiciary that would be independent, impartial, protect the human rights, and strengthen democracy. That was the historic movement led by the lawyers. Ladies and gentlemen, in 2007, Justice Wajiuddin Ahmad was with me in that movement, and he said probably history would have been different if we had entertained your petition. I go back to 1954. Soon after the independence was rooted in democracy. Soon after the independence, the first test of the judiciary came up before it. It was Samizuddin Khan case. And it came before the Sindh Chief Court. How many in the audience knows the names of those honorable judges who had rendered that first landmark judgment? How many? Can anyone raise the hand? It was, again, you see, nobody knows. Nobody knows, the civil society does not know. That was the first test, and the judiciary should be proud of that. The bench was led by the Chief Justice, Justice George Constantine, and the other honorable judges were Justice Bachel, Justice Baksh, and Justice Viliani. Thank you, Mr. Ali Ahmed Kurd. You have changed the theme of this conference. That honorable court rendered that landmark judgment. Had it not been deplorably reversed by the federal court led by Justice Munir, the future of this country would have been very different. That is from where democracy was derailed. Democracy was destroyed. And I, as the Chief Justice, cannot blame anyone. And from there on, it was the Doso case, then the other case, Mohtarma Nusrat Bhutto's case, then Zafar Ali Shah case. All those judgments are part of history now. We can't erase them from the history. These judgments were responsible for making and enabling those that have been referred to by Mr. Ali Ahmed Kurd to exercise their power. What can be more regrettable for an institution that an elected Prime Minister, an honorable judge of that bench, conceded that he was hanged because there was pressure. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ali Ahmed Kurd, yes, as a judicial organ of the state, we must not bury our head in the sand. We can't refuse to accept our mistakes. We have changed the course of history of this country. The authoritarian rules, half of the life of Pakistan's existence is based on authoritarian rules. Regressive governments have destroyed fundamental rights and suppressed freedoms. But this struggle cannot be taken up by the judiciary on its own. The other players are equally important. It reminds me of the Bill of Rights of the Massachusetts Constitution of 1780. And in that, John Adams had identified the two most important rights: the right to have access to an independent court and free press. But when I say free press, it has to be an independent free press and media, not controlled by proprietors having vested interests. This is the advantage of speaking the truth, Ali Ahmed quote, that you have at least started the dialogue. Yes, we all are responsible. We all are responsible, but the buck stops at us, we the judicial organ. Every organ, whether it's the media, whether it's the civil society, whether it's the bar, every one of us have to look inwards. If there is no free media, free speech, there wouldn't be any independence of judiciary. They are interdependent. But the media has to be responsible. But I'm not a pessimist. I'm an optimist. I can assure this gathering on behalf of the Islamabad High Court that we have the resolve not to repeat our mistakes, not to bury our heads in the sand. It is our duty and our responsibility that we earn the respect and confidence of the people who are the real stakeholders of this institution. I hope the others would follow suit. There were many other things that I could say, but again, thank you, Mr. Ali Ahmed Kur, for letting me speak the truth. Thank you very much.
Since we were supposed to conclude this session by 1:30, I would now request the Honorable Chief Justice Lahore High Court, Mr. Justice Muhammad Amir Bhatti, to please come on the stage and share his views with the audience. Justice Amir Bhatti sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Chief Justice, Supreme Court of Pakistan, Mr. Justice Gulzar Ahmad, Honorable Judges of Supreme Court of Pakistan, primarily serve three key purposes which are crucial to the proper administration of justice in the country. They provide an invaluable platform to lawyers and judges for the sharing of ideas across different aspects of the law. They promote communication and understanding between the bench and the bar, and indeed throughout the legal community in a comfortable and harmonious environment away from the adversarial norm of our courts, and finally allow generation of new ideas and approaches to tackle the myriad of legal issues that face not only our country today but are also relevant to nations throughout the world. There is no gainsaying the fact that the judiciary plays a pivotal role in securing societal peace by providing a structured, institutionalized forum for the determination of discord and dispute and the redressal of civil and criminal wrongs and grievances. The Constitution of Pakistan, Republic of Pakistan, calls for the establishment of democratic state where ideas of social justice and rule of law regime supreme. The judiciary in this regard has the heavy responsibility of being the pillar of which the values of a country are founded upon and are upheld. It is tasked with being the sturdiest branch of the state, a guardian of the Constitution and a protector of people's fundamental rights and basic liberties. In order to be able to discharge this duty, it is vital that the judicial system be independent from any external influence or control in order to ensure that the principles laid down within our constitutional framework are treated as something more than mere ambitions. Safeguarding human rights and fundamental freedoms is an essential and integral part of all the democratic and progressive societies. Constitutional courts in Pakistan and the government of Pakistan attaches high priority to promotion and protection of human rights of all the citizens as granted by the Constitution, and in accordance with our religious authorities as well as national and international obligations. The Constitution of Islamic Republic of Pakistan is a primarily legal source of protection of human rights, fundamental rights. The principles of policy lays down non-justiciable rights in the Constitution, which ensures full participation of women in national life, protection of minorities, promotion of social justice and eradication of the social evils, promotion of local self-government, promotion of social and economic well-being of the people, and the promotion of international peace. The laws of Pakistan take their base from the Constitution of Pakistan. Article 5 of the Constitution places an obligation of loyalty and obedience to the Constitution and law on all the citizens of Pakistan. Article 8 states that any law or any custom or usage having the force of law insofar as it is inconsistent with the rights conferred by the Constitution shall, to the extent of such inconsistency, be void. Further human rights covered under the Constitution of Pakistan include the right of individuals to be dealt with in accordance with law, etc. Right to life and liberty is contained in Article 9. Law inconsistent with or in derivation of fundamental rights are to be void. Dignity of man, freedom of speech, and right to profess religion are few of the sacred rights. Moreover, Article 25 is the most significant clause as it talks about the equality of citizens, stating all citizens are equal before law and are entitled to equal protection of law. Furthermore, Article 19A of the Constitution, right of information is a fundamental right. The right you have as a citizen to access information from your government and private bodies that receives public funds. Right to information is based on principle that information belongs to the people. It is considered important to empower citizens, ensure transparency in governance, and improve public services by facilitating public participation and oversight. Under Article 199(2), the High Court is vested the duty of protect fundamental rights of citizens, and the Supreme Court has extraordinary jurisdiction under Article 184, Sub-Article 3, through which it takes up matters where fundamental rights are infringed. Pakistan judiciary has a long and distinguished history of ensuring that fundamental freedoms of all the citizens are protected and has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to the protection and enforcement of fundamental freedoms enshrined within our constitutional settlements, laws, and jurisprudence. I would now take this opportunity to express my gratitude for the Honorable Chief Justice of Pakistan, Mr. Justice Gulzar Ahmad. His faithfulness to constitutionalism and rule of law has been a hallmark of his judgment, and his adherence to law. A judge of deep judicial insight, he has been part of benches deciding high-profile cases and has authored many landmark judgments. A few months ago, the Honorable Supreme Court ordered for the recovery of rupees 33 million from the accused involved in the burning of Hindu temple in KPK and allowed the Hindu community to rebuild their temple as they wanted. Moreover, his lordship, while inaugurating the building of Pink Ribbon Hospital, the first ever dedicated breast cancer hospital in Pakistan, highlighted the constitutional right of women in Pakistan and said the women were not only a valuable part of the country, but a lifeline of the society. Likewise, our Supreme Court took up the matter of load shedding in Karachi and observed that it was incumbent upon the federal government to ensure that the citizens were not deprived of the facility of electricity, as it was a matter of right to life, right of dignity of man, privacy of home, right to trade and business, profession and occupation, and right to equality under the Constitution. Moreover, in another human rights case, it was opined that economic prosperity was a sine qua non for the implementation of all fundamental rights, the paramount right being that of life. The word justice and the term dispensation of justice might lead you to believe that it is the sole responsibility of the judiciary to dispense justice, which is wrong. Dispensation of justice has several limbs which require all three organs of the state to chip to their bit. Each of them has to perform their functions independently without interfering in the jurisdiction and domain of the other. Moreover, as per import of Article 37D of the Constitution, the state is to ensure inexpensive and expeditious justice. Dispensation of justice is in fact core principle of rule of law. The judiciary has important role in maintaining the rule of law, which is not an abstract consideration, rather it is a living faith which derives its inspiration from constitutional character. The importance of administration justice is pivotal to the smooth functioning of the country. Justice ensures uniformity, impartiality, and collective wisdom, while its absence can lead to anarchy, inhuman behavior, and actions contrary to moral values. Therefore, the concept of fair trial and due process has always been the golden principle of administration of justice. Moreover, the superior courts have contributed significantly to the growth of democracy in Pakistan. This is evident from the several decisions of the courts reviewing legislative and executive actions that were contrary to the provisions of the Constitution. The courts have made radical pronouncement on some constitutional issues such as conduct of election, revenue allocation, division of powers, structuring of discretion, fundamental rights of political parties and local governments, which have gone a long way in strengthening the democracy in Pakistan. In Asad Ali case, PLD 2020-21, Supreme Court 770, the August Supreme Court declared Section 3 of the Punjab Local Government Act 2019 to be ultra vires the Constitution and consequently held that local governments were existing in Punjab prior to promulgation of the said section stood restored and shall complete their term in accordance with law. It is apparent from the few references mentioned above that the courts have been alive to its constitutional responsibilities. As far as the protection of democracy is concerned, even at the grassroots level, it would not be out of place to mention here that the courts have performed more than any other organ or person in protecting citizens' rights and ensuring that there is no battle of might, but each player plays in accordance to the rule of the game. Ladies and gentlemen, the judiciary is working day and night for the purpose of improving overall justice system. And consequently, I must say that a silent revolution is taking place in our justice sector. Having said this, I must also contend that the judicial system is far from perfect because of many systemic issues that hinder the dispensation of timely justice in Pakistan, ultimately leading to situations where some groups in our society find themselves at a greater disadvantage, like the minorities, women, and poor. However, we must not let this prevail. To this end, we need to find ways to enhance cooperation between the judiciary, the legal fraternity, and the other related institutions. I firmly believe that these steps will go a long way towards improving the justice delivery system. Hazrat Ali Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu once remarked, I firmly believe in the rule of law as the foundation for all of our basic rights. It is indeed right to say rule of law is the cornerstone of all democratic societies, and to strengthen democracy is to create prosperity for our future generations. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to our concluding part. Before I invite the Honorable Chief Justice, the guest of honor for today's session, for his concluding remarks, I would request Mr. Justice Qazi Faiz from Supreme Court of Pakistan to please join us on the podium and share his views.
Honorable Chief Justice of Pakistan, Honorable Senior Purely Judge of Pakistan, Honorable Chief Justice of Lahore High Court, Honorable Chief Justice of the Islamabad High Court, Honorable Judges of the Supreme Court, Honorable Judges of the High Courts, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. We start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. This Quranic verse is also inscribed at the very beginning of our Constitution. And every judge, constitutional office holder, and all members of the armed forces recite it before they proceed to take the oath to uphold the Constitution. Every citizen of Pakistan and every person in Pakistan is required to abide by the Constitution. It's a very long topic, and I'm impressed with your resilience that after 3 hours you're still here. So I'm confident for the future of democracy if brave people like you show such resilience in hearing old men like me. Thank you. The Constitution guarantees about 24 human rights. I should just mention, I had written a 16-page paper. I won't inflict it on you, but there are copies available for those who want to read it. It's referenced. And why did I write it? I wrote it for the fear of that lady. For the fear of that lady. आपके तकरीर कर गए कुछ पढ़ लेते जज साहब तो okay, so I don't know if she'll acquit me or not. I'll do my best. I won't go through the entire fundamental rights. The topic is interesting, human rights and strengthening democracy, and each one of the fundamental rights one can spend a day on talking about it. Now, I shall briefly mention a few fundamental rights which are perceived to be the most under attack in Pakistan. Freedom of the press and the related right to information, and the rights of women, including the right of girls to be educated. Her Excellency Kaminara wanted to see a lady judge in the Supreme Court. What she failed to mention is that a lady judge was appointed for the first time in Balochistan, who rose to the rank of Chief Justice of Balochistan. ASMA Jahangir became the President of Pakistan, President of the Supreme Court Bar Association of Pakistan. There was some conference which he had arranged, and there was a large Indian contingent. I said, your nation has still not had a lady as the President of your Bar Association.
Yes.
Another distinction for this country is, and that is a distinction amongst 50 Muslim countries of the world, we had the first Muslim Prime Minister.
Yes.
Justice Athar has said a number of things which I did, and he has complimented Gur Sahab, who we're also a bit scared of. And he mentioned judges who did not take oath. He forgot to mention the first of them. He was from Balochistan as well, Justice Dora Patel.
Yes.
It is a dismal situation unless you don't own up to the truth, there is no chance for redemption. The World Press Freedom Index evaluates 180 countries and ranks them according to the prevalence of press freedom. In 2017 and 2018, Pakistan stood at the very low 139th position of the Freedom Index. We've slipped down to the 145th position. This is unforgivable. Why do I say that? We were amongst the first countries of the world who signed up to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The first 48 signatories, Pakistan was there. Liaquat Ali Khan signed it. And what did this Universal Declaration of Human Rights say in its Article 19? Everyone has a right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. That was not all. This was an international document. Pakistan enacted what we refer to as the Objectives Resolution. And this too was done by the first Prime Minister of Pakistan in the year 1949 by the Constituent Assembly. And it has formed part of every constitution of Pakistan till today. And today too it is part of the preamble of the constitution, but its status has now been raised as it has now become a substantive part of the constitution since the year 1985. And from this I will read, freedom of thought and expression must be ensured. And another portion of this Objectives Resolution which we sometimes forget to mention is the role of the founder of this great nation, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And this Objective Resolution binds us all to be faithful to the declaration made by the founder of Pakistan, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, that Pakistan would be a democratic state based on Islamic principles of social justice. Democracy, you don't beg for democracy, it is your right to demand democracy. One of the greatest constitutional minds that the subcontinent produced was Jinnah. And as far back as the press, he was commenting about the Press Act of 1910. 1910, 111 years ago. And he called it a striking blow at the liberty of the press which we all prize. And I again quote the great leader, gagging the legitimate constitutional expression of the public opinion and criticism of the government by banning meetings and processions and other executive methods by which the police and the administration are used not only to gag the free expression of opinion and criticism, which are the elementary rights of the citizen, but have destroyed all semblance of civil liberties and have by various methods chloroformed the press. I will not pass judgment on today's press. You are better. An international organization will better do that. He stood before in the Imperial Legislative Council, of which he was a member, and spoke truth to a foreign occupying power. Do these words resonate today? That is your call. Are you going to keep millions and millions of people trodden under your feet for fear that they may demand more rights? Are you going to keep them? Are you going to keep them in ignorance and darkness forever and for all ages to come, because they may stand up against you and say that we have certain rights and you must give them to us? Is that the feeling of humanity? Is that the spirit of humanity? It is the elementary right of every man to say, if he is wrong, that he is wrong, and that he should be righted. That's our founder's words. And were these new novel words, or was he following an earlier and a much, much greater tradition? The teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And what did he say? This is a very established hadith, and I have referenced all points in my paper. There are 85 references. The best jihad is to speak truth to a tyrannical ruler. The best jihad, Jihad-e-Akbar, this is the greater one. Jihad-e-Asghar is the lesser one, which is take up arms for the sake of the Almighty, not for any other purpose. And this, the Prophet derives from the Holy Quran, which says, speak the truth. And it's not just one, there are a number of verses of the Holy Quran which says so, and these have been listed as well. There's a very famous incident. A man came to the Prophet and said, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I have many sins. I steal, I gamble, I drink, and I lie. But for your sake, I'll give up one of them. Stop lying. The fundamental right to information, also has its moorings in Islam. The Holy Quran in a number of verses prohibits the concealment of public matters which the people have the right to know, and consider such concealment to be satanic. There are many stories which you know better than me, where prophets, where Khulafai Rashidin were asked, how did you get this extra cloak or shirt? And they did not get any answer. There are two important decisions of the courts of Pakistan regarding Pakistan Broadcasting Corporation and Pakistan Television Corporation. I will not go into the details of it. I just quoted one portion from it. If the Prime Minister spoke as a party leader on Pakistan TV or BBC, then the opposition was entitled to equal coverage. And if this was not done, it would be clearly discriminatory and thus not permissible. This judgment stands till today. A free and robust press is the backbone of democracy, serving both as a conscience and as a mirror. History tells us that totalitarian regimes suppress the press and impose censorship. Regard now the other fundamental rights, rights of women. We are doing poorly. I think Excellency Turner mentioned the Global Gender Gap Index, where we are at number 153 out of 156. Why has that happened? Women's participation and empowerment, the founder guaranteed in a select central working committee of the All India Muslim League, encompassing nearly the all of subcontinent. There was always a lady member, Begum Muhammad Ali. Fatima Jinnah was an educated woman, accompanied her brother everywhere where he went, and she stood in elections against the dictator of the day. The non-discriminatory equality principle is embedded in Islam. And I quote the Quran, the most honored of you in the sight of Allah is the one who is the most righteous. One can be either a man or a woman. There is no distinction. There is no superiority. And another thought which we don't realize how the importance, the significance of women. The part thread by a woman has been incorporated as an obligatory ritual in Islam. As far as I'm aware, with my limited knowledge of other faiths, this is probably the only ritual in established religion which has been established by a woman. And that was the running of Bibi Hajra, may Allah be pleased with her, between the hills of Safa and Marwa, looking for water for her son, Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam. So this is the status, and where have we come to? Where indeed we have come to. These are not isolated examples. The list goes on and on. Prophets, Hazrat Khadija bin Khalid was a businesswoman, widowed, 40 years old, proposed to the Prophet. A young man of 25, 15 years age difference. Can we envisage this happening in today's society? She is referred to as Ummul Mu'mineen, mother of all Muslims. Does anyone emulate her example? Does anyone emulate the example of the Prophet in this regard? Or always the second wife is a younger woman? Then we have, and he did not marry during her lifetime again. And then we have the great example of Hazrat Abu Bakr's daughter, Aisha. May Allah be pleased with both of them. That we narrate hadiths, and she is the source of about 3,000 of them. Not only that, she participated in battle, she taught in the mosque. And these are well-established facts. It's not just a case that the Prophet's family were so privileged. The Hazrat Umar Farooq, may Allah be pleased with him, appointed Shifa bint Abdullah, a woman who was experienced in business matters, as market inspector in Medina. Now, imagine, go back in time. Then, that society. In our constitution, the state is required to provide free and compulsory education to all children of all ages from age 5 to age 16. But what is happening? Ill-tempered ferociousness is displayed to keep women and girls out of school and keep them illiterate and uneducated. The ignorant who target girls going to school and attack school audaciously justify their violent acts as being Islamic. The Holy Quran itself exposes their monstrous lies. The very first wahi, revelation from up high to the Prophet was one word, Iqra, Fail Amar, the command form of the word, read. Of the myriads of other things that the Almighty could have conveyed to his last prophet, he chose the word Iqra, and then he followed it by the word pen, which is in the 4th verse, and then by the word education or learning, which is in the 5th verse. So the first speech through Archangel Jibreel alayhi salam, or Gabriel, was read, write, education or learn. So these are the fundamentals of the faith. Now I move to the second part of the, I think that I won't do justice to the thing, and that is how have we judicially strengthened democracy? I thank the organizers for their graciousness in not placing a question mark at the end. I think they insinuated it though. Pakistan may be the only country in the world whose judiciary has played a major role in determining the course of democracy. 24th October 1954, Ghulam Muhammad, Governor General, boots out, closes shop, closes democracy. Maulvi Tamizuddin Khan assails the act, which Chief Justice Islamabad High Court has mentioned. They go before the 5-member bench of the Sindh Chief Court, it was known as, which unanimously decided allowed the petition. And I just quote one line from it. The Constituent Assembly purported dissolution is a nullity in law, and that both it and the office of its president are still existent. I fail to see how the action of the respondents can possibly be defended on any ground whatsoever. How wrong could 5 judges be? And they were led by Justice Constantine. Because the federal court where the appeal was filed was presided over by Muhammad Munir, and they had other views. And this, if I was to not quote it, you won't believe it, but this is a reported judgment, it's in the textbooks. About the Constituent Assembly, he said, it lived in a fool's paradise if it was ever seized with the notion that it was a sovereign body in the state. Then who is? One doesn't know. I'm quite clear in my mind that we are not concerned with the consequences, however beneficial or disastrous they may be. and brazenly disregarded the consequences. Now what hubris, what utter self-assured hubris. Then elections held, 1956 constitution comes on 23rd of March 1956. Major General Iskandar Mirza throws it out, throws out assembly, throws out elected people, throws out elected government. And then, sadly, the Supreme Court, hearing two criminal appeals, infamously known as the Doso case, criminal appeals, they go out and justify such unconstitutional act. And how did they do so? The Constitution was vanquished by the Supreme Court, relying on the theoretical musings of an Austrian writer. And at his quote from the judgment, a victorious revolution or a successful coup d'etat is an internationally recognized legal method of changing a constitution. These are judges who had sworn to uphold the constitution, but they were mesmerized by the writings of Hans Kelsen and certified him to be a renowned modern jurist. Incidentally, Hans Kelsen had to leave Austria when another Austrian, Hitler, took over power. So he should have stood there and said, I stand by my words now. Then Muhammad Ayub Khan, Commander-in-Chief, he did the same act. He drafted his own constitution in the year 1962. He did not abide by his own constitution, handed it over to another General Yahya Khan. And then comes the role of this lady, who was then a young woman, ASMA Jilani. She challenged the detention of her father, Malik Ghulam Jilani, and the validity of the Defense of Pakistan rules under which he was incarcerated. And there was another petition as well by Zarina Gohar challenging Altaf Hussain Gohar, the editor-in-chief of Dawn's, his detention. And what does the Supreme Court now say? They overruled Doso's judgment and said, a perfectly good country was made into a laughing stock. A country which came into being with a written constitution providing for a parliamentary form of government with distribution of state power between the executive, legislature and the judiciary was soon converted into an autocracy and eventually degenerated into military dictatorship, and the people ceased to have any share in the exercise of state powers. These are words of the Supreme Court. Next election, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto is elected as Prime Minister, and what remains of Pakistan, its western wing, becomes Pakistan, and the constitution, the present constitution, was adopted or came into effect on 14th of August 1973. But soon we're back to square one. 5th of July 1977 comes and General Ziaullah, the Chief of Army Staff, seizes power. Again, the Supreme Court, and this Supreme Court headed by Chief Justice Anwarul Haq, quote, the declared objectives of the martial law are to create conditions suitable for the holding of free and fair elections. What irony. In terms of the 1973 Constitution, yet we know first it was 1 month, then 9 months, and then 11 years till the next elections came on non-party basis. The mockery was made of Islam, the misuse of the teachings of Islam was because nowhere in the Quran the Almighty does not even grant such pharaonic powers to His beloved, the prophets. And once we got rid, this was the direct device. The indirect device was the Article 58(2)(b) of the Constitution, which is no longer there, which was first used by Ghulam Issar Khan because of a speech given by the then Prime Minister Mian Mohammad Nawaz Sharif on 17th of April 1993, and then the same power of sacking the government. But this time they were lucky, as the Supreme Court by majority of 10-1 restored the National Assembly and the Cabinet. The next time it was used on 5th of November 1996 by Farooq Ahmad Khan Laghari in dissolving the first woman Prime Minister and her Cabinet and sent her home, the country was not so lucky. And politician Mahmood Khan Achakzai, he too belongs to Balochistan. And others challenged this. And the then Chief Justice Azad Ali Shah said this, I quote him, in fact, Article 58(2)(b) has shut the door on martial law forever. Could anyone have been so wrong? Because on 12th of October 1999, another general struck General Pervez Musharraf and seized power. And this was again validated by the Supreme Court by a voluminous judgment of running into 287 paragraphs by the then Chief Justice Irshad Hasan Khan. And here, how did the Supreme Court endorse his dictatorial rule? It said, state necessity, and used a Latin maxim which no one in Pakistan understood. So it sounds good. Salus populi suprema lex, and had the audacity to say that this doctrine is recognized, quote, and these are quotes, recognized not only in Islam and other religions of the world, but also accepted by eminent international jurists. General Musharraf struck twice, again on 3rd of November 2007. I just should mention the earlier attacks and the later attacks were different. Ziaul Haq and then all later dictators realized that first of all, I will now use Excellency Stirner's love of cricket, that you must not only get an umpire of your choice, you must fix the field, you must permit ball tampering. What am I saying? First, judges take an oath of loyalty to me, the dictator of the day, and then hear the cases. So this is the new set that started by first compelling judges to take oath, and those who did not take went home. Justice Dora Patel had set a great precedent, which sadly few followed. He manipulated a petition filed by Tikka Muhammad Iqbal, and which got endorsed in virtually 20 days. He incarcerated the then Chief Justice of Pakistan and 13 judges of the Supreme Court. A nationwide protest ensued. Nationwide. That's where your responsibility comes in. Known as the lawyers' movement, but I think it was all of civil society. And we have one articulate member of that society on the bench, as a speaker. It's just a mere coincidence that he's from Balochistan. And judges were finally restored on 23rd of March 2009. Finally, and I hope this is the final nail in the coffin, a 14-member bench of the Supreme Court headed by Iftikhar Chaudhary allowed the petition filed by the Sindh High Court Bar Association, uprooted the decision in Tikka Muhammad Khan and all earlier decisions of the Supreme Court where they had validated unconstitutional dictatorial military rule. It was, Chaudhary Sahib wrote 200 paragraphs. Yes, I will not read them. I will just read additional note, I think, which sums it up beautifully, and that comprises of only 6 paragraphs. I'm only going to read one, and that was by Justice Jawad S. Khwaja. He writes, can constitutional legitimacy flow from the force of arms, or, as is more graphically put at times, from the barrel of a gun? And if reliance on coercive forces gaining power is legitimized or condoned, there can be no rational basis for decrying the assault on the writ of the state by any band of marauders, robbers, adventurers, and zealots of varying extremes in the political spectrum, who undoubtedly will be encouraged in adopting similar use of arms and violence to force their ideological creeds on the people of Pakistan. The people of Pakistan have consciously chosen the method for their own governance. The Constitution is a document which at the conscious level records in classical terms the social contract between the people and those who they chose to entrust with the governance of the state. Courts have nothing to do with it. And I should just mention the World Justice Rule of Law Index, which has been referred to. Good sir, here I disagree with you. We are not at 126 number, we are 130 number as per the report out of 139 countries, which is not good. Which is not a matter to clap. Which is not a matter to clap. It's a matter of reflection. Now, all this is very well. All this is very well. What do we do? What do we collectively do? What do we individually do? And I will again go back to the Constitution. The Constitution commences by stating that sovereignty over the entire universe belongs to Almighty Allah alone, and that authority to be exercised is by the people of Pakistan through their chosen representatives. The second recital refers to the will of the people of Pakistan, and it specifically denigrates oppression and tyranny. So we come to now reflect, or we should, as a nation, not just the judiciary, not just the lawyers, not just civil society, but every citizen of Pakistan should reflect. There must be, there are other countries in the world, there is truth commissions, but we have an older device, much older, a device which is found in the Holy Quran. And this is the concept of muhasaba. I'll come to that in a minute. We need to reflect, admit and accept our mistakes, set aside our arrogance and delusions, seek forgiveness and promise never to violate the Constitution again. Only then there is the possibility of being forgiven by the people. We are there because of the people. People are not there because of us. Islam requires us to do something very similar in the concept of muhasaba. Muhasaba means introspections, self-scrutiny, self-evaluation and self-examination, and leads to seek forgiveness, tawbah, which attracts divine mercy. Almighty Allah has prescribed mercy on Himself. This is the Quran, Holy Quran says. Among the 99 names or attributes of God is At-Tawwab, the acceptor of repentance. A person who repents, does tawbah and resolves not to repeat the same mistake again, frees himself from the web of delusion. Muhasaba redacts self-esteem, self-importance, pride and arrogance. If we remain delusional and arrogant, do not reflect, do not admit our mistakes, and do not seek forgiveness for our trespasses, there is no possibility of redemption in this world before the people, and in that world before our Creator. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much. Ye phone aapka.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Justice Qazi Faiz for your enlightening address paper. जज साहब से मैं ये भी दरख्वास्त करूँगा कि अगर आप क्योंकि ये काम करते हैं जजमेंट्स में, इसका उर्दू तर्जुमा अगर आप हमें फ़राहम करें आज के इस पेपर का, तो हम उसे आसमा जहांगीर फाउंडेशन के वेबसाइट पे लगाएंगे। आपने पूरी हिस्ट्री का अहाता किया। Before I move forward, I've been requested by the management to extend our sincerest thanks to Supreme Court Bar Association office bearers, Pakistan Bar Council members, Wasim Mumtaz साहब, खावर इकराम साहब यहाँ पे हैं, हफीजुर रहमान साहब, कल्बे हसन साहब, हमारे साथ ताहिर नसरुल्लाह साहब हैं, पीर मसूद हैं, फॉर्मर प्रेसिडेंट सुप्रीम कोर्ट बार एसोसिएशन कुछ इधर बैठे हैं, कुछ सामने अली ज़फ़र साहब हैं, कामरान मुर्तज़ा साहब हैं, सैयद अमजद शाह साहब का मैंने पहले जिक्र किया, द ऑफिस बेयरर्स ऑफ पंजाब बार काउंसिल, वाइस चेयरमैन मिस्टर फरहान शहजाद एंड हाजी अफसल चेयरमैन एग्जीक्यूटिव कमेटी, for their support in holding this session. آپ سب نے ہمیں پوری گائیڈنس فراہم کی اور جو لوجسٹک سپورٹ تھی اس کے ساتھ ساتھ. اینڈ I would also request کہ جو ہمارے ینگ سٹارز ہیں, جو والنٹیئرز ہیں, اور عاصمہ جہانگیر فاؤنڈیشن کی تمام ٹیم, they deserve a big applause for organizing this event. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to conclude this session. May I request the chief guest, the chief of ceremony, Chief Justice Pakistan, Mr. Justice Gulzar Ahmad, to please come on the podium. میں ایک دفعہ پھر دوستوں سے یہ گزارش کروں گا, میں اپنے نوجوان ساتھیوں سے یہ گزارش کروں گا کہ آپ پلیز ڈونٹ اس کو ایک, آپ نے جیسے صدر سپریم کورٹ بار نے کہا, میں مینجمنٹ کی طرف سے میں ایک بار پھر آپ سے یہ ریکویسٹ کر رہا ہوں, اور میں آئی وڈ ریکویسٹ پولیس سلمان کو کہ آپ جائیں, ان کے درمیان ٹھہرے. یہ کانفرنس کا کلوزنگ نہیں ہے, یہ اوپننگ سیشن ہے. آپ کو سیاسی سیشن بھی ملے گا اس میں. وی آر گریٹفل ٹو دا آنریبل ممبرز آف دا بینچ کہ انہوں نے آج ہماری ریکویسٹ پہ تشریف لائے اور گریس کیا اس فنکشن کو. میں آپ کے اور چیف جسٹس گلزار صاحب کے درمیان حائل نہیں رہنا چاہتا. چیف جسٹس آف پاکستان مسٹر جسٹس گلزار احمد.
بہت شکریہ. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. السلام علیکم. جناب ثاقب نثار صاحب, فارمر چیف جسٹس آف پاکستان, میرے بھائی ججز سپریم کورٹ آف پاکستان, ہائی کورٹ کے جج صاحبان, ممبرز آف دی بار, ڈسٹنگوشڈ ایکسلنسیز فرام دی ایمبیسیز and European Parliament and so also United Nations. تھوڑا شروع کرنے کا معاملہ بدل گیا ہے بات کو. احمد صاحب نے کچھ باتیں کہی ہیں جس کے بارے میں ذکر کرنا بہت ضروری ہے. لوگوں کو کسی قسم کا غلط فہمی کا شکار نہیں ہونا چاہیے, اور ادارہ عدلیہ کے ادارے کا ہیڈ ہونے کی حیثیت سے یہ مجھ پہ لازم ہے کہ میں ان باتوں کا کسی حد تک جواب دوں جو یہاں تک بن سکتا ہے. سب سے پہلی بات یہ ہے کہ جو احمد صاحب نے میری عدالت کے بارے میں اگر کوئی بات کہی ہے تو میں اس کو بالکل اس بات سے میں ایگری نہیں کروں گا. میں اپنی سپریم کورٹ کے بارے میں اگر کہوں تو میرے سارے ججز سپریم کورٹ آف پاکستان کے نہایت تندہی کے ساتھ ایکسٹرا آورز لگا کے محنت کے ساتھ کام کر رہے ہیں, اور عوام کو انصاف, ان کے بنیادی حقوق, قانون کی عملداری, آئین کی عملداری, انصاف کی بلندی اور ایک ڈیموکریٹک کنٹری کی پراسپیرٹی کے لیے مستقل کام کر رہے ہیں اور تندہی کے ساتھ کام کر رہے ہیں. اسی طرح سے میرے ہائی کورٹ کے ججز, چاہے وہ اسلام آباد ہائی کورٹ کے ہوں, چاہے وہ پشاور ہائی کورٹ کے ہوں, چاہے وہ لاہور ہائی کورٹ کے ہوں, چاہے وہ بلوچستان کے ہوں, چاہے وہ سندھ کے ہوں, سب ججز میرے عدالت کے تندہی کے ساتھ کام کر رہے ہیں. میری لوئر جوڈیشری بھی بہت محنت کے ساتھ, لگن کے ساتھ لوگوں کو انصاف فراہم کر رہی ہے. ان کے جو مقدمے ہیں ان کو سنتے ہیں, اس کے فیصلے قانون کے مطابق دیتے ہیں. اگر وہ کسی کا مقدمے میں کسی کو اگر کوئی اعتراض ہوتا ہے تو اس کا قانونی حق ہوتا ہے کہ وہ اس کو چیلنج کرے اور بڑی عدالت میں چیلنج کر کے اس کو اپنے قانون کی پیروی کر کے اور اس کو فیصلے کو تبدیل کرانا چاہے تو تبدیل بھی ہو سکتے. تو ایک جنرل اسٹیٹمنٹ دے کے کہ عدالت ہماری یہاں پہ آزاد نہیں ہے، یہ تاثر دینا کہ کسی کے ہم دباؤ میں کام کر رہے ہیں، کسی اداروں کے دباؤ میں کام کر رہے ہیں، کم سے کم مجھے کوئی ایسی انفلوئنس کا کوئی یاد نہیں پڑتی. میں نے کسی دباؤ کا نہیں لیا کسی ادارے کا، نہ میں نے کبھی کسی ادارے کی بات سنی. میرے کو کوئی نہیں بتاتا کہ میں اپنا فیصلہ کیسے لکھوں، میرے کو کوئی گائیڈ نہیں کرتا کہ میں اپنا فیصلہ کیسے لکھوں. اور میں نے کبھی ایسا کوئی فیصلہ نہیں کیا اپنے سامنے جو مقدمے میرے سامنے آئے جو میں نے کسی کے کہنے پہ کی ہوں. نہ کسی کی جرت ہوئی میرے کو کچھ کہنے کی آج تک. میں یہ سامنے آپ کے کہنا چاہتا ہوں کسی نے میرے کام میں انٹرفیئر نہیں کیا. میں نے جو اپنے فیصلے دیے اپنے کانشس کے مطابق، اپنی سمجھ کے مطابق، آئین کو سمجھ کے مطابق، قانون کو سمجھ کے مطابق فیصلے دیے ہیں. میں نے کسی کے ڈکٹیشن نہ تو میں نے آج تک سنی، نہ دیکھی، نہ سمجھی، نہ کوئی میں نے ایسا اثرات کیے اپنے اوپر. اور میں سمجھتا ہوں یہی کردار میرے باقی سارے ججز کا ہے. میری عدالت لوگوں کو انصاف دیتی ہے. علی احمد قرد صاحب آپ عدالتوں میں آئے ہیں، دیکھیں کیا ہو رہا ہے. آپ عدالتوں کے فیصلے پڑھیں، آپ دیکھیں کیا ہو رہا ہے. روز میری کورٹ کے ججمنٹ سے لوگوں ججز میرے لکھتے ہیں، کتابوں میں پبلش ہوتی ہیں، ان کو پڑھیں اور دیکھیں کس قدر آزادی کے ساتھ ہماری عدالت کام کر رہی ہے اور قانون کی پیروی کر رہی ہے، آئین کی عمل درآمد کر رہی ہے. ایسے جنرلائز اسٹیٹمنٹ دے کے وداؤٹ کوٹنگ اینی انسٹنس، اور اگر کوئی انسٹنس ہے، کوئی غلطی کا انسٹنس ہے تو وہ انسٹنس کو آ کے صحیح کرایا جاتا ہے. عدالتوں کے فیصلے ایک ایولیوشنری پروسیس ہے. ہر دنیا کے ملک کی عدالت کے ساتھ یہی ایولیوشنری پروسیس چلے ہیں. کہیں غلط فیصلے آتے ہیں، کہیں صحیح فیصلے آتے ہیں. یہ غلط فیصلے اور صحیح فیصلے یہ بھی لوگوں کی اپنی اوپینینز ہوتے ہیں. ضروری نہیں ہے کہ ایک اوپینین سے دوسرا اوپینین مانے اس بات کو. کچھ لوگ کہتے ہیں یہ صحیح فیصلے ہیں، کچھ لوگ کہتے ہیں یہ غلط فیصلے ہیں. ہر ایک کا اپنا اپنا اوپینین ہے، ہر ایک کو اپنی رائے کا اختیار ہے. سب کی رائے کا اختیار کا رسپیکٹ کیا جاتا ہے. یہی خوبصورتی ہے ہمارے قانون کی، یہی خوبصورتی ہے ہمارے عدالتی نظام کی، یہی ڈیموکریٹک پروسیس کی ایک خوبصورتی ہے. اور اس پہ ہم عمل درآمد کرتے ہیں. کوئی ہمیں روکے؟ آج تک کسی کی ہمت نہیں ہو ہمیں روکنے کی. ہماری عدالت جو فیصلہ کرنا چاہتی ہے فری ہے کرنے کے لیے اور کرتی ہے. ہر ایک کا محاسبہ کرتی ہے جس کا مقدمہ سامنے آتا ہے. بتا دیں کس کی ڈکٹیشن کے اوپر کون سا فیصلہ ہوا آج تک. ایسا نہیں ہے. غلط فہمیاں پیدا نہیں کرے لوگوں کے اندر. میں اپنے ادارے کے بارے میں بات کرتا ہوں. لوگوں کو غلط باتیں نہیں بتائیں، انتشار نہیں پھیلائیں، اداروں کے اوپر سے بھروسہ نہیں اٹھوائیں لوگوں کا. یہ کام نہیں ہے. میں یہ کہنا چاہتا ہوں میرے بھائیوں بہنوں اور میرے بچوں، یہ ملک پاکستان یہ ہمارے لیے قائم و دائم ہے اور قائم و دائم رہے گا. اور ہماری عدالت انشاءاللہ جس طرح سے ہم کام کر رہے ہیں اور کرتے رہیں گے، اس ملک کے اندر قانون کی، آئین کی اور ہر طرح سے ڈیموکریسی کی فیور کرتے رہیں گے، اسی کا پرچار کرتے رہیں گے، اسی کو نافذ کرتے رہیں گے. کسی ان ڈیموکریٹک سیٹ اپ کو ہم ایکسیپٹ نہیں کریں گے. ہم چھوڑ دیں گے. میں پہلے بھی چھوڑا. میرے خیال میں اتنی بات کافی ہے آج کے لیے. تھینک یو ویری مچ.
تھینک یو ویری مچ. چیف جسٹس گلزار احمد نے بھی آج دل کی باتیں کی. میں ایک بار پھر عاصمہ جہانگیر فاؤنڈیشن، پاکستان بار کونسل، سپریم کورٹ بار ایسوسی ایشن اور AGHS کی طرف سے آپ سب احباب کا شکر گزار ہوں، معزز مہمانان گرامی کا، ڈیلیگیٹس کا، پارٹیسپینٹس کا، فار bearing with us for such a long time. Thank you so much. We are going for a lunch break اور اس کے بعد ہمارے جو روٹین کے سیشنز ہیں یہ شروع ہو جائیں گے. سب دوستوں سے گزارش ہے کہ باہر لان میں کھانے کا اہتمام ہے، آپ تشریف لے جائیے. اور دوبارہ آپ کے پاس پروگرام آیا ہوا ہے، اس پروگرام کے مطابق جو ہمارے آج کے ڈفرینٹ ٹاپکس کے اوپر سیشنز ہو رہے ہیں، پلیز میک شیور کہ آپ اپنی چوائس کے سیشن میں ضرور جائیں. بہت بہت شکریہ. بہت ایک کانفرنس بیگ میں ایک لیپ ٹاپ غلطی سے شاید بیگ ایکسچینج ہو گیا ہے کسی کے ساتھ یا اس میں نکلا ہے، اس ایریا میں تھا، اس میں کانفرنس کا بڑا امپورٹنٹ مٹیریل ہے اس لیپ ٹاپ میں. تو گزارش کریں گے ذرا اپنا ارد گرد دیکھ لیں، اگر کسی صاحب کو